Seems like every speaker company nowadays has their own version of ATMOS enabled or elevation speaker, able to sit atop a speaker to bounce audio off the ceiling, or mounted on a wall or ceiling for the ultimate three-dimensional audio experience. But even though Dolby Atmos specifications are standard across the board, are all ATMOS speakers the same? Well, we're about to find out in this
ATMOS Speaker Showdown.
Movies, music. Welcome to the main event, people of YouTube. My name is Elon Osborne, and this is my channel where I talk about movies, audio, and music. And for today's Atmos speaker comparison, I reached out to several companies, and 4 responded with incredible haste. Our contenders are the Klipsch R-41SA, Emotiva AirMotiv A1, SVS Prime Elevation, and Aperion A5 Height Module. So a huge thank you to all 4 participants. Let's give them a round of applause. Now, what is an Atmos speaker? Can't any speaker be used as Atmos since it just depends on where it's mounted? Well, sure. But when it comes to the term Dolby Atmos enabled or elevation, speakers that are specifically meant for Dolby Atmos applications, we see one common physical attribute between all of them. They have a slant to them. So whether they're firing audio at the ceiling, mounted on a wall, or mounted on a ceiling, the end result is audio arriving at your main listening position from an elevated plane. So now that we got that out of the way, regarding the 4 brands of speakers in question, let's make a quick comparison. Starting with
frequency response.
The Klipsch R-41SA conforms to Dolby Atmos specifications. Okay. Off to a good start. Like most online forums, there are heated debates about what that means. If it's good to set the crossover frequency to 150 Hz, 120 Hz, or THX standard 80 Hz. But given that this speaker is a variant on their R41M bookshelf, which has a frequency response of 68 Hz to 21 kHz, we'll just assume it's close to that. AirMotiv A1, 75 Hz to 28 kHz. Aperion A5, 120 Hz to 30 kHz. SVS Prime Elevation, 55 Hz to 25 kHz.
Sensitivity.
R41SA, conforms to Dolby Atmos specifications again. I see. Well, the R41M bookshelf has a sensitivity rating of 90 decibels, so we'll go with that. AirMotiv A1, 85 decibels. Aperion A5, 87 decibels. And SVS, also 87 decibels.
Power handling.
R41SA, 50 watts RMS, 100 watts peak. AirMotiv A1, 60 watts RMS, 120 watts peak. Aperion A5, it doesn't actually say on their website, but it does recommend being powered by an amp up to 100 watts. So all the speakers are kind of in the same ballpark here. And same with SVS, they don't list power handling per se, but do recommend being powered up to 150 watts.
Nominal impedance.
R41SA, 8 ohms. AirMotiv A1, 4 ohms. Aperion A5, 6 ohms. And SVS, 8 ohms.
Tweeters.
R41SA, 1-inch aluminum LTS tweeter mated to Klipsch's signature Tractrix horn. AirMotiv A1, 32mm folded ribbon tweeter. Aperion A5, 1-inch natural fiber silk dome tweeter which is ferrofluid cooled. SVS, 1-inch aluminum dome tweeter.
Woofers.
R41SA, 4-inch spun copper IMG woofer. AirMotiv A1, 4-inch woven fiber cone woofer. Aperion A5, 5.25-inch aluminum cone woofer, which should be noted is the only speaker in this bunch that has a concentric design where the tweeter is inside the woofer, kind of like KEF speakers, for example. So how does that factor into its audio performance? We'll find out later in this video. And finally, SVS has a 4.5-inch polypropylene woofer.
Cabinet type.
R41SA, sealed MDF or medium density fiber board. AirMotiv A1, sealed HDF or high density fiber board. Aperion A5, sealed MDF. SVS, MDF, and as you can see, it's the only one in the bunch with a 1-inch rear bass port.
Weight.
R41SA, 6 pounds. AirMotiv A1, 7.5 pounds. Aperion A5, 7.5 pounds. SVS, 7.8 pounds.
Removable grills.
Check, 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 and check. But the AirMotiv A1 is the only one that comes with two styles: super thin flat grill and monster contour directivity control grill when it's being used to bounce sound off the ceiling. Interesting.
Binding posts.
R-41SA, 5-way binding posts. AirMotiv A1, spring-loaded binding posts. Ooh, yikes. I'm gonna have to ding Emotiva on that one. But it does have this switch here that changes the audio slightly depending on if you're wall mounting it or using it to reflect audio off the ceiling. According to the manual, switching it to the reflection mode gives it an EQ boost of 3 decibels at 7 kilohertz. Neat! Aperion A5, 5-way binding posts. And SVS, 5-way binding posts. I got to hydrate.
Mounting.
R-41SA. There is a keyhole mount on the back. Although one thing to note is that the R-41SA is the only pair that comes with these little rubber feet installed for when they're being used as reflective Atmos speakers. Otherwise, you need to remove the rubber feet if you want to wall mount them. I wish they came separately in the box and I could just add them later if I wanted, because they were stuck on there real good and ended up leaving a bit of adhesive residue behind. Anywho, AirMotiv A1. There are 2 tiny holes on the back where you can install these keyhole mounting brackets that come with it. Aperion A5, the only one in the bunch that doesn't come with a mounting bracket, but makes up for it with versatility in the many different ways they can be mounted with their swivel wall mounts or stealth mounts. In fact, they do sell a 4-pack of A5 height modules that do come with swivel and wall mounts if you're wanting to step up your Atmos game all in one fell swoop. And SVS, they do come with their own proprietary mounting brackets since they are ported and need that little extra space between the wall or ceiling and the speaker itself. In fact, these are the only speakers in the bunch that are designed in such a way that do not support an upward firing position. SVS just knew that bouncing audio off the ceiling isn't all that great, so they just noped right out of there. I imagine this is what it was like when someone brought it up in a pitch meeting. What about upward firing speakers?
You serious?
Price.
Well, actually, you can check for yourself in this category. Since we're right in the middle of the holiday shopping season and discounts are happening daily, prices that I quote now might not be accurate at other times of the year. So yeah, if you happen to like one speaker over another, I'll leave it up to you to find out how much you're going to spend. Now, let me set up the testing space real quick. My brother-in-law just bought a fixer-upper on a large plot of land just outside of town. So since he's planning on doing some renovations over the next few months, it was a perfect space to put some various speakers on his wall and ceiling. I lucked out there for sure. He has 8-foot ceilings, so I knew it would be more ideal for upward firing tests as opposed to my 10-foot ceilings. So I set up a 3.0.2 configuration with a pair of Aperion Novus 6T towers, a Novus N5C center speaker, and all the various Atmos speakers. The speakers are being powered by an Onkyo TX NR787 with an Xbox One S hooked up to it so I can play 4K Blu-rays. I also set the crossover frequency to the THX standard 80 Hz, no matter what the frequency response of the speaker was. If it could go lower than 80 Hz, great. If not, just give me your best shot. And for this test, I played the intro to Mad Max Fury Road, specifically the scene where he breaks free of his captors and runs like a wild man through the halls before getting captured once again, and we see the title screen. I chose this because, well, this is true for the entire movie really, but there is so much going on in the height channels in this scene. Music, sound effects, voices, grunts, heavy breathing. The movie is insane and I love every second of it. I watched that scene over and over with all the speakers hooked up, then I disconnected the front sound stage, so I only heard what was coming out of the height speakers. And on top of that, repositioned the height speakers to be reflecting, on the wall, and on the ceiling. I did that with each of the 4 speakers in question.
Note.
I will be posting a separate video soon about reflecting versus on wall versus on ceiling with Atmos speakers, so stay tuned for that. But this video is strictly about audio quality and how well they work as Atmos speakers. So without further ado, how do they sound? The Klipsch R-41SA and AirMotiv A1 sounded the most similar, although I would say that the AirMotiv still sounded a bit brighter, better highs than the Klipsch, which sounded just a bit more muffled in the mid-range than all the rest of the speakers in this test. Not terrible, but noticeable, which was surprising given that Klipsch speakers are typically known for their bright quality. The Aperion A5 sounded great. Even though a frequency response up to 30 kHz is way outside of human hearing, I think that helped put out more detail in the high frequencies we can hear as humans. But the SVS, I think, took the cake regarding sound quality alone. Having that bass port on the back, having those rigid tweeters and woofers, being the deepest speaker of the bunch, I think helped reproduce some awesome neutral sound along with some body and punch to it that others were lacking. I would say Aperion A5 was a very close second, just straight audio to audio comparison. But maybe since the SVS speakers have a frequency response that reaches down to an impressive 55 Hz, I think that helped tremendously in the body and fullness of the sound. Because that would be my next observation. The Klipsch and AirMotiv speakers to me sounded like they were the B-team speakers compared to their bookshelf and tower speaker counterparts. It's like they figured they didn't need to be up to the same strict standards since they were meant for only Atmos applications. Which is valid since mostly what comes out of height channels is atmospherics, subtle sounds, wind, rain, the occasional sound effect whizzing by. So they typically don't need to be set to the same standards as a bookshelf or tower speaker. But that being said, both Aperion and SVS were like, screw that. These are going to be speakers that can handle audio all on their own if they have to. Aperion even encourages the A5 speakers to be used not just for Atmos applications, but even surrounds or a stereo pair for your computer, for example. And being the only speaker with a concentric design, I think really helps with some fantastic audio reproduction. And SVS goes even a step further since these are basically prime satellite speakers that just happen to be slanted. So they can be used as anything: front soundstage, surround, front firing Atmos, or side firing Atmos, whatever. So if I were to rate these 4 Atmos speakers, I would say number 4 is the Klipsch R-41SA. The slightly muddy mid-range was surprising, the rubber feet that come pre-installed, it's the longest of the bunch, so if size matters to you, that might be an issue. Coming in at number 3 is the AirMotiv A1. A bit brighter than the Klipsch, but still sounding like a B-team speaker. It does well being one of the cheapest of the bunch though. So if you're wanting to stick to a budget, the Klipsch and AirMotiv speakers still get the job done at an affordable price point. Number 2 is the Aperion A5. Its concentric design makes it the most compact of the bunch, with incredible detail in the high end. At a 6 ohm nominal impedance, it can handle some power. And the various ways it can be mounted is very impressive. Although having to get the wall mount separately might be a deal breaker for some of you, given that these are already more expensive than the Klipsch and AirMotivs. But clearly number 1 is the SVS Prime Elevation speakers. They come with their own mounting system, they can be mounted in numerous ways, or used in various applications other than Atmos speakers, so their versatility is just bonkers. They're also slightly more affordable than the Aperion A5 speakers. And the bass port and frequency response provides the listener with some astounding, full-sounding audio from such a compact speaker design. With that being said though, even with me ranking these speakers, don't get me wrong, they all get the job done with Atmos. The differences between the speakers was more obvious when I disconnected the front soundstage, but when they were playing in concert with the towers in the center channel, they all still sounded great. Of course you're not going to play audio only through the Atmos speakers, only a psycho like me is going to run experiments like that, come on. But they complemented the entire speaker system well, providing me with a height aspect that made it sound so large. So just take my tests with a grain of salt, because when these speakers are added to a 5.1 or 7.1 system, they all sound great. It's just that I think the SVS and Aperion sound a little better, which makes sense since they're a little more expensive. So no matter your budget, just know that there are Atmos speakers out there that will complement your system well, especially if you're trying to timbre match your speakers. If you have Klipsch, stick with Klipsch. AirMotiv, stick with AirMotiv. FYI, Klipsch does offer the RP500SA Atmos speakers, so you do have a more expensive option if you so choose. Bottom line is, you get what you pay for, but ultimately, Atmos really does expand the soundstage to new heights. Now you just gotta wait for my video about where I'd recommend you put those Atmos speakers. Such a tease. I know.
And there you have it.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something along the way. Since before doing this comparison, I figured all Atmos speakers were basically the same, you know? What about you? Did your suspicions get confirmation? Are you going to stick to a budget or splurge for something more expensive? I sure hope to have a second version of this video involving really expensive Atmos speakers, like from KEF or B&W or those more expensive RP500SA Klipsch speakers. Could they really be that much better? But who knows when that might happen. Anywho, as always, please be kind to each other out there. Don't just watch movies and Shivi shows. Shivi skivvies. Don't just watch movies and TV shows, experience them, and of course, always be listening. All of my goodness is my different, then I could wish you Merry Christmas.